My name is Owen Muir. I am still at this point, for the next hot minute, child psychiatry fellow at the NYU School of Medicine program, and I work with Dr. McMillan at Brooklyn Minds, our group practice. So I'm going to be speaking about Mentalizing, the Children's State Hospital, Lessons from a Novel Milieu. And I realized as I was watching all these other presentations, I really invented DBTS for staff, or MBTS for staff, because this is mostly not about working with the children. This is about working with the staff in the hospital. Potential conflicts, they're all here. Grant funding for a podcast, Springer book, etc. So I've been attempting to bring mentalization to the Children's State Hospital setting here in New York. And the brief summary is it hasn't been easy. So I had a mentor in medical school who said in any lecture, you tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and you tell them what you told them. So here I am. In brief, what is mentalizing? Most of the people in this room are probably much more savvy than the general audience, so I'll review that briefly. How mentalizing can fail. What does this look like in the novel milieu of the Children's State Hospital? My ambitious plan, learning from some of my mistakes, and what can we learn in the future that'll help us implement these approaches in novel settings. So mentalizing is fundamental to being human. And because of that, it's really, really hard to explain succinctly. This is my, at the time, probably 6-month-old daughter learning about other people and herself by looking at mom. Life is rubbish for all of us, but if you can talk about your thoughts and feelings, you don't need to do crazy things. That's Peter Fonagy from a video from a movie a colleague put together called Borderline the Film. The state hospital setting for kids is full of crazy things all the time. If you can imagine a crazy thing, it's happening, both for the kids and sometimes for the staff. So in defining mentalization, I basically do it 3 different ways. Being able to see oneself from the outside as others might see you, and seeing others from the inside as they might see themselves. Being able to understand a misunderstanding, working out, oh, you thought and I thought, okay, now I see where we got this wrong. And the ability to hold the mind and mental processes in mind. That's me looking like I'm trying to mentalize. These are my twins, and you can see attachment begins early, both true with each other and us. And I think one of the updates to the MBT model, which has been so profound this year, is the concept of epistemic trust, trust in social information. And from an implementation perspective, if you don't understand this, you're not going to be able to do it successfully. How many years does it take to learn math? Anybody? All of them. Right. That's exactly correct. How long does it take to trust your mom when she says, "Don't go with that bad man in the free candy van"? How many seconds? I mean, it's a different time scale entirely. You learn that right away, and if we didn't, as a species, we'd be dead. Because if you can just take advantage of anybody, that won't go well. And if you can't learn from your caregivers what's important, I mean, if you were sent to school every day telling you, it's division day, it's this or die, by your mom, you might be more sincere about learning division. So socially cued information is really important, and as one of my patients so astutely put it, well, people tell me things all the time, but I have alternative facts, right? And it's that I can't wait until it's 20 years from now. I can use that without any bias or fear whatsoever of perspectives in the audience. A brief review of mentalization and its failure. So the goal of MBT treatment and MBT-infused approaches is to fly at the right emotional altitude. Too high, and your wings are being burned off like Icarus to the sun, and too low, and there's a mountain waiting for you. So I had to do a little rebranding of MBT for Americans because very smart British people came up with it and used words like epistemic that take the staff full of Haitian and Jamaican immigrants in New York and make them go, not effective. So, psychic equivalence in the MBT model, your feelings becomes the facts. UFOs are real, I saw it, I know it, I believe it. Look, it's a UFO, Google it. In the MBT model, we also have pretend mode, a low state of emotional arousal and attachment activation, and you get a lot of yeah-ing from patients who don't act like they mean it. And this gentleman is saying, I love homework, which it does not look like he actually has any connection between the thought and the feeling. And when the guy comes home in teleological mode, and you were really mad when you kicked him out of the house, and he comes back with flowers, well, there's concrete proof of his intentions. The physical actions in the real world determine my understanding of his motivation, and yeah, I'll forgive you, honey. So I rebranded these things, what I hoped would be more successful. And the graph I use here is my little bell curve, curiosity on the y-axis. On the horizontal axis, I have cold to hot, and I rebrand this sometimes because it's funny as number of F words given. And you have to give enough of an F to be mentalizing well. If it's a little too low, I rebranded pretend mode as whatever mode because I thought it was more child-specific. And if it's too hot, you can get into feelings equaling facts, and your inner state is the truth. There is no other. There's an absence of doubt. And prove-it thinking, or teleological mode in the MBT model, which we see all the time. And when I'm illustrating this to people, I give them the example of, well, if you're checking out at CVS for a Kit Kat, how much do you care about the internal experience of the cashier? Not at all, in general. And if someone's putting a gun at your head, you're not going, I wonder what's going on for the gunman today that he decided to rob me. You're thinking, don't kill me, and not being able to maintain that curious stance. So mentalizing can go disastrously offline in children, especially in the ICU of attachment disorders, which is state. And I'm going to use the case of Lisa, who I met on my very first day in the hospital setting. So as a first-year child psychiatry fellow, we rotate at this state hospital, and this is my first day just walking in the door. Risk management will be joining us for the meeting. Great. She's a teen girl. She lives with her biological parents. She's had many, many hospitalizations in various institutions here in New York. Self-injury of a severe type and very high risk. She had a history of sexual assault at age 12 by a stranger she met online who she arranged the meeting with. So she and her family are going on vacation, and she set it up with him so he could have a room down the hall and she could have a sexual liaison with this adult man. In the hospital on this stay, she complained of auditory hallucinations, multiple personalities, gender identity confusion. One day she was Gabe, and the next day she was Lisa, and she identified with the abuser. She said, I wanted to do, basically, sexually assaulting the staff, so then she could go join him in prison. The problem now that risk management was so excited about was the daily swallowing of sharp metal objects as needed by this person, and she would literally get shipped off to get an endoscopy, basically daily. The gastroenterologists were calling us and yelling at us. Risk management, like, where are all these sharp pieces of metal coming from? A question I think is fair, but doesn't really touch at the fact that the child wants to swallow them. And then a wise question was asked by Dr. Hasek, who's actually the discussant at our ACAP presentation. Can we just spend 5 minutes to talk about what's going on with this kid? After, an hour of, what we do with the medications, which she's on 9 million of, and which million diagnoses can we give? So the MBT understanding that I attempted to pitch was you have this propensity to be unwell. And in this child, that's a high P. In Peter Fonagy's research, along with Caspi et al., they've shown that this propensity to be unwell is essentially transdiagnostic and predicts levels of unwellness across symptoms from every disorder. Those internalizing and externalizing subtypes that were so exciting break down. And it is better explained in factor analysis by this predisposition to be unwell. You add some trauma and perhaps some neglect before that, and that leads to lack of trust in social information or epistemic mistrust. Add a little bit of stress, and for patients with attachment disruptions or frank borderline personality disorder, or usually other things as well, you can lead to mentalization failures like we saw with her. And I said, hey, perhaps Lisa can't believe we care unless we prove it by saving her life with an endoscope every single day. I'll tell you more about that case in a moment, but I will point out that mentalizing fails among staff too. Overheard among the staff, and this is over a couple days this year. Nursing manager, we like it when the doctors get hit. then they can understand what we go through. One of the staff was given the Starfish Award for being the best direct care staff member, the people who are with the children all the time. That award is called the Starfish Award, and then he was mocked by his colleagues for having won the award by paging him overhead as Mr. Starfish. Mr. Starfish always does this. You can tell these are absolute statements. In MBT, we have the J word, just. These kids just need consequences. I heard that literally 4 times in one day 2 weeks ago. I don't trust my coworkers. They are only here for the paycheck. The team is doing nothing about this relationship between the patients, and so doing something teleologically had to happen, and they were separated from each other to much distress. And, oh, I know why Mr. Starfish does this. The rules don't apply to him. Okay. This is some data from a survey I did at the beginning of this academic year, using some of the questions from, well, all the questions actually from the AMBIT, or Adaptive Mentalization-Based Integrative Treatment Model from London, which is their MBT adaptation for systems dealing with high-risk kids. And we can see 60+% disagree that people who work at this state hospital feel understood and accepted by each other. So that's a lot of epistemic mistrust to deal with. If you have problems, just leave them at the door. I heard that, again, 3 times in one day. And this is a door through which you're dealing with the most disturbed people on earth. And you may have some problems at home as well, which are going to interact with that work. Leaving them at the door didn't seem realistic to me. If you look at the time spent in the hospital by various disciplines, and this is how I refine my interventions, you can see 168 hours, which is all there are in a week, is all time they're spending with direct care and nursing. Those people are always there. Teachers in the school, because they have a full-time school with New York State school teachers, 27.5 hours. And only with the MD or the social work team, 2 to 3 hours a week. So I started when I first got there, and this was a little ambitious for me as a first-year fellow, but hey, I'm going to do it anyway. Hey, Dr. Hasek, why don't I train all the direct care staff in this fun MBT thing? And he said, okay, do it. Basically what I did is educational sessions with highly interactive role-playing, some video content which didn't work very well because it was Anthony Bateman and he's way too British for them. And we basically role-played Lisa in most of the sessions and staff interactions with me playing Lisa. And then some modeling of me of what the approach would look like. And the staff, over these 7 sessions, I got responses to them about how they thought it went. 89% of them rated it 6 of 10 or higher, with a skew to much greater levels of approval of my 7 days of training. Have you seen coworkers using the MBT approach with kids? Not you, because I expected there would be a Lake Wobegon effect. And shockingly, 95% had. Now, maybe this is one guy doing it very conspicuously. But I don't think so. We were all talking. Lisa had to be on constant observation for months. And so every direct care staff member took a turn with her. And so not only did they get to act this out in classes with me, but they got to see me working with her every day using this approach, modeling the approach for them. So everyone who's working with this individual patient had this model to work with as best as I could provide it. One of the staff members responded, MBT helps me understand how to approach the kids better and my personal life also, which is frankly also true for me. We have a mentalizing milieu in our house as much as we can. Lisa, I worked with her every day that I was there. And about a week in, Lisa is attempting to swallow something sharp. She's clawing at the walls like a crazed animal. Kevin, a wonderful staff member, is grabbing her arms to keep her from sticking stuff in her mouth. And I go up and I try to be validating. Which is a kind of a core skill for many of these approaches. But I said, hey, what's going on? She's like, I feel so awful. I need to swallow something. Oh, wait, swallowing something helps you feel better. I don't know that I understood that. Yeah, I just have to feel better. And we're getting in your way of feeling better? Yes, it's up. Oh, my God, that's so awful. At the same time, we're kind of stuck because we can't let you die by swallowing sharp things. But if we're getting in the way of the only thing that helps, that's a totally messed up situation. And she calmed down. And over the course of the next 4 weeks, she didn't swallow a thing. At the end of that 4 weeks, I'm having lunch with her. She earned, through every week of not swallowing things, an exciting lunch that one of the staff brought in. And she says, I think I wanted to be sick. I think I made up problems for myself, like hearing voices and multiple personalities. I don't think any of those things were true. And my eyes bug out of my head, and I had to, keep myself from laughing. I think I probably did a little bit. And I said, yeah, I think you nailed it. She hasn't been back. This is the hospital that would get her, and she has not been back to that hospital. So, and it's now over a year later. So phase 2, this whole academic year, I had about 400 plus hours of training time. Every Monday was dedicated to this MBT training activity. So I had planned out trainings for both the non-clinical staff and the clinical staff. The MBT introductory group I ran for the clinical staff. The group supervision model I transitioned to after that. It's essentially MBT group therapy, but for the non-clinicians, but with kind of the overlay of supervision, so it doesn't feel like we're being treated. On-site supervision during crises. Every time there's a Redstone emergency, I would go to that emergency, see what's happening, break that down with clinicians later. Teachers were trained, the rec staff I've worked with, direct care staff, as I mentioned, and the ancillary staff have gotten some training, though not a lot. The clinician training, which I was very hopeful about, as I was on my literal first day of medical school, I'm not Narain Fusimi. It was modeled after the MBT basic and practitioner training, as well as the MBT adolescent training, which I'd had up to this time. So it involved several weeks of theory in like 1-hour chunks. Then we had role-playing interactions where clinicians could practice these approaches. We would do the MBT group supervision model from the MBT practitioner training, and then the really remarkable thing is we were able to bring in the patients who we just had supervision about to actually have those interactions we just talked about happen in front of everybody, which is kind of amazing because sometimes it actually works. And using the examples of kids that all of these people know is really important. What I learned is what we need for this intervention to work is trust. You need to build trust with the staff, and you need to have their buy-in. Because if they don't, they're going to be like, meh, another training, thanks OMH, and not do any of it because they know better. And honestly, many of them do. They've been working for 20 plus years in the state hospital setting. They've seen it all. And that isn't something to be scoffed at. And me coming in there as a child psychiatry fellow and being, here's this great new thing, was not going to be learned unless I established a reason to believe in me, which I did. I did interviews during crises. I put myself on the front line with the staff. I did the same official training they have to do for positive crisis management solutions, which is not great. But every level needs to buy in. You need administration to kind of schedule the times for staff, etc. The highest levels of engagement were the people I had the most time scheduled with. So the clinician trainings are regularly well attended every week. The teacher trainings, they all are there like clockwork, all of them, all the time. It's remarkable. The administration I've been meeting with on a one-on-one basis, including executive director of the hospital, director of nursing, medical director, associate medical director, finance guy, and hanging out in the central nursing office and talking to the central nursing officers, when there's any kind of break, and kind of pitching them slowly but surely these ideas. And then the in vivo use of actual cases with the kids they're actually dealing with is remarkable from a training perspective. The teachers decided to dedicate twice as much time as we had planned. I pitched, okay, give me 20 weeks, which is a huge ask. And they're like, every week we're doing this. The teachers were able to use the MBT group supervision model to supervise their administrators. There were concerns from Albany about the problems with getting the kids to school. And so it had kind of come down from administration. Teachers, why aren't the kids getting to school? With the teachers, quite wisely, I brought their administrator down and had him present the problem, sit back and shut up, like on model MBT supervision, and the teachers mentalized about his problem for him. And they had great observations like, we don't know why the kids aren't in school. We're in the school the whole time. Something happened before they got here that led them to not be here, but we can't know that because we have no idea. They didn't come in the first place. I was actually requested by the teachers, the director of the principal at the school, to do a training for all of the OMH teachers in this part of New York, which I gladly accepted, and was a hit for all the other OMH teachers, and actually the Albany OMH continuing ed director who was there. I did not know that, but I'm pretty happy about it. Hoping to get me another gig. And the administration really took personal meetings with the administrators, talking about their situations, their cases, their administrative hurdles, and seeing if I could, kind of in person offer them something from this model to help them in their work. And that has led to buy-in from most of the administrators, from the 30-plus year executive director, the associate director who's been such a strong support in making this happen, director of nursing, and the medical director as well. One of the questions I asked, is MBT an approach that works with kids at the hospital? And you can see the skew is towards, whatever 4 is between agree and strongly agree, but very little responses on the other side. And I've started to use the skills I learned in the trainings in the kids I care for. And again, here we have almost 40% strongly agreeing that they've been using the skills, even from the initial 7-hour training. There are some roadblocks. 1 day a week dedicated, not enough. There are 24 hours of coverage at this hospital. I can't get to all the shifts practically, and some people are out on Monday as their day off. When I had Thursday as well, when I was there as a first-year fellow, I could dedicate some time for different groups. Haven't been able to do that this year. So I've had about 400-plus hours of supervision and training. It's not enough. It's too limited, especially kind of up front. So I didn't get to front-load the training like you would at a training, right? The 3 days of MBT training would have been great. But we got a hospital to run, so that's not possible. And having me only as the manpower really limited my ability to, do assessments that I'd want to do, to have, concrete measures of the outcomes. My role as an outsider was both a positive and a minus. I'm actually getting credentialed there as a physician just so I can cover shifts when I happen to be there, so I can be working with the staff in real time and building more trust with them so they can understand that I'm on the front lines with them treating these kids. There's some specific issues in the state setting, an extremely high degree of mistrust among the staff. We have inherently non-mentalizing approaches of the Justice Center, which is our regulatory agency, which is run by former prosecutors and cops. A very high degree of violence in the hospital. Mandated training on the PMCS training, which directly contradicts much of the not knowing stance of MBT. The kids are very sick. And I don't think the staff are supported well enough personally. You can't just leave that at the door if you're going to work with these kids. And the cultural translation from very smart British people who use terms like teleological and Haitian and Jamaican immigrants is a tough one. And I really had to work hard to find ways to explain it in a culturally relevant way. In review, mentalization developed in attachment relationships. The kids' attachment with treatment team members is a replay of that. It helps restore mentalizing in kids and staff. This restores basic trust and decreases crazy behavior. Most people delivering this approach worldwide, if you ask the Anna Freud Center, are not master clinicians. They're nurses, they're direct care staff at hospitals throughout Europe. And getting a system changed requires massive investment of time from trainers who take it seriously and buy-in from staff at all levels to make a systems level change. You can sell it to some people relatively easily, but those are probably not the people who need it most. The most important lesson I took away is restoring epistemic trust in the system, in your colleagues, lets you be able to do that with the kids. That's my contact info. Thank you so much.